So today we're just going to walk through a upgrade of Symantec VIP Enterprise Gateway. So on this particular server, to determine the version that I'm using, I'm just going to go into the Enterprise Gateway installation folder and go to the program files x86, Symantec, Enterprise Gateway, and go to version. And you can see this is version 9.7. You can also determine that from the console itself. At the bottom of the screen, at the bottom of the browser, you can see that it's version 9.7.0. So to upgrade this to the latest version, which in this case, while I'm making this video, is version 9.9.2, the instructions say that we need to export the settings from 9.7, install a fresh version of Enterprise Gateway, and then import the settings from there. And that's what I'm going to be doing. Now, for the sake of this video, I'm not going to go all the way to 9.9.0 or 9.9.1 to import. I'm going to go to 9.8.4, and then we're going to do some manual upgrading from there. So I've logged into my VIP manager, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Downloads, Enterprise Gateway, and 9.8.0 is the base build. From there, we have to upgrade. So I'm just going to grab the Windows version. And while that's downloading, I'm going to go back here to my Enterprise Gateway and to upgrade, to import the settings, we first have to export them. So on this Enterprise Gateway, you can see it's a very simple setup. I've got one validation server, I've got my self-service portal, I've got my LDAT synchronization service. So all these different services are running. I don't have to do anything except go to settings, go to export settings, and go export. And you can see everything's going to be exported. We're going to go next. You can encrypt them if you want to. The file, go next, and then I'm going to just download it. Now normally I'm going to save this to a off server location, such as a thumb drive, or even email it to myself, just so if worst case scenario, something happens to the server and I have to reinstall, this export will be available to me. So I'm just going to save this. That else, it just put it in the downloads folder. It looks like my Enterprise Gateway is there also. I'm going to finish this, and then I'm going to go into my control panel, uninstall a program, and Enterprise Gateway 9.7. I'm going to go ahead and uninstall this. Now, before I do that, there's one more thing I wanted to mention. In your VIP certificate settings, this certificate cannot be exported, nor can any certificates you have under SSL certificates. So when you fresh install the next Enterprise Gateway, these certificates will have to be imported. And if you don't have the SSL certificate, and that's a requirement, you'll have to create a new one. But of course, the VIP certificate you can download. You can create one and download it from the VIP Manager portal by going here, going to Manage VIP Certificates, and then you can see here are my certificates, and then I can just download it. And for the sake of this training, I'm going to download a fresh one. Set a password. I'm going to download, save it, and that also went to my downloads. So everything's in my downloads that I need. I think we're done here for a bit, so I'm going to go back here and uninstall. The uninstallation is now complete and it's disappeared from my programs and features. So let's go to my downloads folder, find my Enterprise Gateway installation 9.8 Windows. I'm just going to extract that to the same folder. And there it is. I'll right click and I'll run this as administrator. And you're just going to choose the defaults as you're going through the installation. Here you're going to set the administrator username and password that was set on the 9.7 installation. If you're using your user store for console authentication, those settings will be imported when you finish installation and import those settings. So we'll go next and let that finish installing. Click finish and it'll launch. Now if we go back here to the old console and refresh this just to verify, you'll see we're now on 9.8.0. So the reason I did that is because on this version it attempts to launch Internet Explorer, which I avoid, and I've got Firefox here. So now I'm going to log in with the password I had set in the previous setup. I'm going to add my VIP certificate that I downloaded from the downloads. Here's my certificate. Put in the password, and then I'll give it a logical alias name. It can be whatever you want, as long as it helps you identify this particular certificate in the server. So submit this, imported successfully. Now when we click our home, everything's great. Now that we're on 9.8.0, we're not going to do any importing at this point. We want to get to where we need to be before we do that import. And the goal of that is 990 or 991. And from there, we can import the 9.7 settings. So normally to do an upgrade, you're just going to go to the settings, and go to the update settings, and check for updates. But in this case, as you can see, that we have a failure. So to troubleshoot this, you can look at that URL and check with your firewall team to make sure you can hit that. If there's no way around that and you need to do a manual upgrade, this next piece is going to show how to do a manual VIP Enterprise Gateway update from 9.8.0 to ultimately 9.9.2. The upgrade guides are available on the Symantec support portal on the Broadcom website. If you go to support.broadcom.com, you can navigate to the Symantec VIP software section and find the Symantec VIP Enterprise Gateway Upgrade Guide. And in this case, we're going to be ultimately going to 9.9.2, which is what this guide is for. But looking at the prerequisites and scrolling down, we'll get all the instructions we need to upgrade. On page 3, we can see that if we're going from 9.8.0, we must first upgrade to Enterprise Gateway 9.8.4, and then we can go to 9.9.1. So that's what we're going to do now. I'm going to minimize this, get back to our VIP manager, go back to our downloads, Enterprise Gateway 9.8, and you'll see there's patches folder 9.8.4, 9.8.0 to 9.8.4. This is what we're going to use. I'm going to download this. Everything I'm doing from here on out is outlined in the Enterprise Gateway Upgrade Guide that I showed a second ago. I'm going to go to the folder where we have the upgrade download. And here it is. We're going to extract this to the downloads folder. All right. So we're going to then copy all of these files in here to a temp folder on the drive the Enterprise Gateway is installed onto. In some cases, if you've installed it onto the D drive, you would create a temp folder at the root of the D drive and put all these files in there. In this case, I've got the C drive. I already have a TMP folder that was created. So I'll go back to my downloads, grab all these files. You can cut or copy, whatever you want to do. Paste. And we're going to leave this open because we're going to use this. And now we're going to browse to the installation directory on the Enterprise Gateway. Now you'll notice that there are some old .back files on here. If you've previously attempted to upgrade and it failed, you may still have a .back folder here, file folder. But if that's the case, you'll want to delete that file. And since we're probably going to be going up to 9.9.0 or 9.9.1, we're going to delete these just to avoid any kind of conflict. And when we do the upgrade, it'll create a new .bak file that contains all of the current files and folders that you're upgrading from, but it renames it to the version you're going to. So because we're going to 9.8.4, it's going to create a VIP Enterprise Gateway 9.8.4.back file. And I'll show you that here in a moment. We've got the temp folder here. We're going to browse to the Symantec Enterprise Gateway. We're going to go to the Tools folder. Now here you'll notice there's an action script.jar file and an action script.bat file. We're only going to rename the action script.jar file. And I just give it 9.7. It'll warn us. And then we're going to copy the action script.jar from the temporary folder into this. There it is. Then I'm going to launch a command prompt with administrator privilege. Confirm that it's administrator for this to happen. From the command prompt, we're going to navigate to this folder here. So we can actually copy this and get right to that folder. Now from the command line to do the upgrade, we're going to call action script.bat followed by the temp folder. And we paste it right there. If your temp folder for whatever reason has spaces in it, you're going to want to put this in quotes. And we're going to tell it what version we're upgrading to, 9.8.4. Hit enter, and it executes and takes care of everything. So going back to the folder I was telling you about earlier, the Symantec folder, during this process, the backup folder gets created. When we see that appear, then we know we're getting close to the end. This whole upgrade process will take a couple of minutes. While this is happening, you can go and refresh this. This is my VP Manager. Refresh this, and you can see that it's doing the upgrade. Now we've got an upgrade completed successfully. Go back to the Symantec folder, and sure enough, there's the 9.8.4.back. This is significant because if for whatever reason you need to roll back to 9.7, this is the file you'll use, and you'll just kind of do the exact opposite of what we're doing to upgrade. You'll downgrade from the command prompt similarly. When the upgrade's done, even though this page is displayed, it could take a couple of minutes for the Enterprise Gateway service to start. You can verify the service by going into the console, going into your Symantec VIP Enterprise Gateway, this over a little bit, and you can see that it's running. So if we refresh this, and log in, there we go. I had mentioned earlier that it's a good idea to wait until you get up to 9.9.0, 9.9.1 to import the settings from the 9.7. It is possible to import into 9.8.4, and just to be safe, I'll show you how that's done. You're going to go to the import settings. We're going to locate the file that we exported earlier, which is right here. We're going to go ahead, actually to my downloads right here. There it is. It has the date stamp in the file name. Open, go to next, and you'll see all the different things it's going to import. Finish. And now you can see that there's my validation server. I'll go ahead and turn that on. Identity providers, I can turn this on. And everything appears to be starting up correctly. We didn't try my the LDAP synchronization, so I can make sure this starts. And that starts also. So on my home tab, everything looks good. All my services are started. You can run any testing you want at this point to make sure your validations are working, make sure everything's good. You can even do another export of the 984 if you want to, and I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Go ahead and download this. However, because we already have our 9.7 export in there, I'm just going to rename this to 984. Now we have our 9.7 and our 984 exports. Once we're all done, we can remove these. But for now, until we get to where we need to be, just go ahead and finish this, and we'll get now to the next version. And the next version, according to the guide, is the 991. So we'll go from 984, we're going to go to 991. We'll skip over 990. You probably noticed that there is no 990 involved here. We're just going straight to 991. So to get there, we'll go back to our VIP account. We'll go to our download files, Enterprise Gateway, 991, and grab the upgrade file. We will save it. There's 991. We'll extract this. And here we go. Now the one thing I didn't do that I probably should have done is in our temp folder, I had extracted everything into this TMP folder. So to keep it separate from the 991 upgrade, I'm just going to create a folder 984. And put them all into this 984 folder. Now, from the download that we extracted, I'm going to shorten this up a little bit, the 991, just so it's easier from the command prompt. I'm just going to say 991. Copy that here. Process for copying the action script.jar file is the same. We're going to go back to the Enterprise Gateway folder, tools, actionscript.jar. We still have our 9.7 there. This was going to be 9.8.4. Go to this 9.9.1 folder now and copy that over. And since we still have our command prompt open, we can just modify the line a little bit. So instead of C:\TMP, it's C:\TMP \991. And the version instead of 9.8.4 is going to be 9.9.1. And we'll go ahead and let this execute. Process is completed. I'll go back to my console, refresh. It looks like it's still in progress. We can go back to our Symantec folder and we should see the 991 folder created, which we do. So that means we're nearly done. And there we go. We got this. Now to show you, if I refresh this immediately, it might not go to the home page. We're going to have to wait a minute to allow the actual Enterprise Gateway service to start up. You might get this, and this is expected. Just give it a minute and then try again. If you notice with this version of the Enterprise Gateway, when we attempt to start the LDAP synchronization service, it forces us to do a simulation. And the reason that happens is because it wants you to see any changes that will be made when that LDAP synchronization occurs once you enable that. And that can be found if you go to the installation folder, into the tools, or I'm sorry, the LDAP sync folder, go to the services, go to the LDAP sync, go to logs. You'll see there's a simulation. You can just open that. I don't have mine configured completely, but what you'll be able to see in here is any changes that will have been made. And you can just search this for total, and that'll give you some totals. For instance, total number of users fetched from the user store, 7. Total numbers will be deleted, 15. Total numbers will be updated is 3. And that's it. Now I don't have the add enabled because I'm adding users through my self-service portal or other means. So if you agree that that LDAP synchronization log looks good, that simulation, you can clear the notification up here and turn this on. One thing you'll notice is when that simulation kicks off, I was showing you, it actually creates an LDAP sync service. This is a simulation. This is the actual live LDAP synchronization service. When we turn the service on, this changes to automatic and it should be running. When we turn it off for the console, this changes to manual and stopped. Since this is started, it's working as we expect it to. Attempt to start our validation server, our identity provider, and everything looks good. Now I don't necessarily want to do another export because I've already got a 9.8.4 export. 9.7 exports cannot be imported into 9.9.2. However, 9.8.4 settings can be imported into 9.9.2. Now that's not going to be necessary at this point because we're just going to be upgrading and all of the settings are preserved. I only worry that we have a valid export because if something happens to go wrong and we need to do a complete reinstall, we have our 9.8.4 export just in case. Just to verify we're on 9.9.1, we can scroll down and see 9.9.1 here. We can also verify the version.txt in the Enterprise Gateway folder like we did in the beginning. So at this point, I'm going to do the same thing we did, and I'm going to get us to 9.9.2. And there you are. Now we're on 9.9.2. You can see here, we can confirm that just by going back to the Enterprise Gateway and go to the version 9.9.2. Once you get everything configured correctly in here and everything tests, I do recommend going and exporting these settings, just in case down the road if anything happens, you always have an export of all your settings. And of course your certificates you'll have to import manually as mentioned before. But the other thing is in the Symantec folder, you'll notice you have all these BAK folders. Now if your purpose for upgrading to 9.9.2 was to remediate the log4j issues, any scans, any potential issues, these folders may still get flagged because they do contain the old log4j files, albeit inactive and not in use, they're still there. So if you get to a point where you're comfortable with the working installation of Enterprise Gateway 9.9.2, you can delete these safely. I'll do that just for the sake of the training here. And then all you have is your Symantec, your VIP Enterprise Gateway folder. Just be aware that once those .bak folders are gone, it's not possible to roll back to the previous version. So just be aware of that. You can also go into the CTMP folder. You can leave these for a while if you want, or you can delete them if you need to free up space. Now, once you're on to 9.9.2, as long as the version is showing there and your services are starting and everything appears to be running correctly, you can run a VP diagnostics just to make sure everything's working correctly. And you can, since you're already in the tools folder in your command prompt, if you still have the command prompt window open, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so we can see this. We can just do VIP diagnostics.bat. And there we go. You should see green throughout this log, the results here. The reason the live update server connectivity failed is obvious. It's because I wasn't able to get to it in the first place. Otherwise, I would have used live update to get where I'm at. This is just showing you the IP address it resolves to. Mail server connectivity, that's expected because I don't have my SMTP connection established. And then you'll get a warning here on the certificates, and the reason that is under the settings, you would notice your trusted CA certificate. There are 203 of them that are installed by default. Some of these have already expired, so that's why you're getting a warning. If your VIP certificate was actually expired, you would actually get a separate warning that the VIP certificate is actually expired. So if this is successful, you should be set. You can now go and send traffic to this enterprise gateway, and once traffic is flowing, the log files will start populating. So if you got validation servers set up, you'll be able to go into them and you'll be able to see what's going on, as is the self-service portal or MyVAP, whatever you have set up. And also during an LDAP synchronization, once that kicks off, you'll be able to see that log in here. There's a simulation log that we looked at earlier that shows you what's going to change during the next LDAP synchronization. And otherwise, you should be set. Always, if possible, create a snapshot or backup of the entire Enterprise Gateway server. And at the very least, go in and export those settings. So hopefully this video is helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to the VIP support team, and we'll be able to assist you. Good luck.